this way? Okay. Anybody try a new skill? One of the things we talked about. Anybody try one, or try maybe not a new skill, but you were intentionally thinking about a skill. What did you try? Okay, I got text, which is really awkward if you're not.
That's what I tried.
I experienced it as awkward. What else? Anybody else try a tool? Okay. We had a really brief conversation about some of those tools we like. Never really thought to ask, do you like time? Do you not like time? Do you like physical touch? Do you not like physical touch? Sounds interesting. We've been just in my parents 20 years. And we've talked about those things, I think, like in general, like love language kind of way, like are you a physical touch person? But not specifically as part of communication. I never asked, hey, is that comfortable or not comfortable for you? And then you get into a pattern like what you do feels comfortable. So I really think, like physical touch, for example, is it comfortable or uncomfortable when someone touches you? Conversation. I didn't think about it. You can just have a pattern. So breaking a pattern is uncomfortable, even if it would normally be comfortable. So I'll be thinking about that more. Okay. Hello.
He's touching her.
I think I said I don't really. If it's not, this is what I did say. If there's a lot of feelings, don't touch me. Don't touch me. If there's a lot of feelings in the conversation, back away. Back. But in a bubble, feelings are already uncomfortable due to feelings. And if it's his feelings, then I'm just very. I am a great empath. I can handle your feelings all day long. Give me all. Give me all of your feelings. If we have to talk about my feelings, then back up that truck. Okay. Conflict. We're just going to embarrass ourselves today and share another story of how we didn't have any tools for conflict resolution. And again, keep in mind, we never fought. I'm going to scratch that. Our first year of marriage, we bickered constantly. Constantly. You know what? Actually, what was the thing that stopped our bickering? Like cold, hard stop. Having a baby. People are like, kids don't save your marriage. They save yours. You're a bad example. We do all things wrong. Having a baby changed it because we were bickering about really inconsequential things, like
Roommate stuff.
Yeah, what?
You know,
Yeah.
like
The roommate
toothpaste,
category.
you know, or drawers.
That's okay. He hates. I don't shut things. He hates it.
Turning
But I would get like,
lights.
I'd be like, the house isn't clean. Right, the house is clean. If we looked at our parents' house, we would understand we have completely different definitions.
Oh yeah, that layer of our, you know, because as a married couple, you have multiple relationships that you hold in one as roommate in the early days of being married. The roommate one was
And then all of a sudden we have a baby, and like whether or not he cleans enough, don't care. He was so good with babies. He walked our baby around in the middle of the night for hours. Everything else.
That was Isabel. She's out there. That was you.
That was Isabel. So anyways, so the bickering stopped, and then we just never fought. We never fought.
Yeah.
I think I shared this when we preached. It's like we're sitting in our marriage therapy, and our marriage is wrecked. It's wrecked, and we're very not okay with each other. And our therapist is like, "You're just so nice to each other. You're so nice," and that was not good because apparently you're not supposed to be nice.
Yeah, well, and if it means avoiding conflict,
Yeah.
that's a negative thing. I think one thing that came up fairly often for us, and probably in a number of the guys that I talk to, you know, have a relationship with, this is like something that I see happen a lot as well. And that is, I'll get really excited about something. Maybe it's going to a movie. And so I'll be really excited, come to Noel and say, hey, made plans, we are going to a movie. It is your favorite thing / my favorite thing / not really your favorite thing. And then I'm in my excitement, Noel will go, you know, just whatever her response would be, oh, okay.
It's like this.
And so it was like rain on the parade. Okay, so I feel rain on the parade. And so then I would feel, super rejected and then just withdraw, like, okay, I'm out. We're not gonna, but we would never talk about that interaction at all. And sometimes we would go to the movie.
Oh, yeah.
So you got 2.5 hours of Cold War happening in the middle of the Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore film. And
No.
we never saw
We
it.
did not go see a rom-com.
We saw 50 First Dates.
I wanted to see that movie. Some dumb kid.
A Tom Cruise movie. So, but that like loop right there of get really excited. And sometimes there was something like behind. There was like a conflict around the thing that I was really excited about. That I just wanted to be like, hey, oh my gosh, aren't we just over that? Why do we gotta talk about that? Let's just go do the exciting thing that I thought of, And that loop just happened over and over and over again.
Yeah, and on my end, we had very few dates when our kids were young, especially. We have more now. And so it was like we couldn't finish sentences, we couldn't have conversations, like I didn't get to get out of the house. And so like I didn't like always going to the movie. It was fine sometimes. So like he'd be like, hey, we're going to the movie, and I'm like, you just want to sit and not talk to me. That's how I am. You just want to go somewhere where I will leave you alone. That's what this is about. Fine. But like I would try and mask it not very well. So if he's that hurt by my face, I'm not gonna bring any words to the party. Like if I start telling you, I hate that you always pick a movie because it feels like you're just trying to avoid me in the most discreet way possible. Then if he shuts, and we both shut down, but he'll shut down and won't talk to me. And so that's something I talk about with my therapist is like, I gotta weigh the cost of this. But like if I say words, then he won't be mad, he won't yell at me, we won't duke it out. It'll just be like 3 days later and he's still okay. And in the end, I would just apologize every time.
That was the Noelle always closed the loop.
When I needed the Cold War to end, I just apologized.
She would come back,
I would be like, okay, I guess I did do that thing wrong. I did it in my face. My face did something, so I'll apologize for that. He would apologize for nothing. It was great.
That's true.
We were happy.
Yeah.
We were so happy. So
it was like, thank you for that apology, and when are we gonna go see?
And we do it again. But here's the thing, like we never, like literally, I think it was within the last year for sure. My therapist looked at me and said, have you ever talked through a conflict to the other side where like you connect? And I was like, is that a thing? Is that like what you do on the other side of the conflict? I apologize, I end the conflict, but no, we had, at that point, been married 19, 20 years. We had never worked all the way through a conflict. Hard things said, more things. And then, I feel better because we talked it through and we made a connection. Like I had never experienced it. And to be honest, I don't think I'd ever seen it. I never saw that from home. And so I didn't even know that was a thing. And so I think we've done it like 3 times now in the last
week.
We've like walked all the way through a conversation. We did, like literally in the last week. I said some things that normally a few years ago he wouldn't have talked about. Just been like Houseville forever. And I would have been like, I'm the worst person on the planet for making this great guy just hate his life. How could I be so terrible? Such a jerk. And then I say sorry for being a jerk. But we didn't. I said a hard thing. I said, what did I say? I actually had to text it, which is not recommended. It was just where we were at.
I appreciated the text. You said I could bring it up. It's like I'm gonna say this in the nicest way possible.
Like I mean this with kindness.
Yeah. This is a you problem.
It was like all worked up about something.
I was.
And I literally I came home and I'm like, hi. And he was like, hey. Thanks for saying that. I like literally almost cried. I'm not a crier. You said words were gonna be all right. It was so great. So, 20 years of marriage, and we finally know how to talk through a problem. So don't be like us. Listen to Sheree. It's gonna be great.
That's right. Come on back up, Sheree.
Oh my. Okay. Matt's going to run up and turn the mic back on. Tell me on the benefits of marriage, what benefit do you like that you saw on that list? What's your favorite benefit of being married from the list? Just shout it out. Yes.
I like the eye contact. I like to be right there.
Okay, no, I get what you're saying, but on our handout, benefits of being married, which somebody else, what's one of your favorites on that list that you're seeing? Yes, children of married people tend to have better outcomes, better sense of well-being. They tend to have less behavioral issues. That's a great benefit. Anybody else? What's your favorite benefit, or what's the one that looks good now? Come on, you guys. Married people have more sex, and come on, that's a great. Oh, bring it up. We're all. Yes. Yeah. Come on, guys. This is a safe space. Yes, that's a different seminar, but I think that's a great benefit of marriage. Married couples tend to have more sex, better sex, more frequent sex. That's a good benefit. Okay, but that's not what we're going to talk about at the next session. They'll have to invite me back. Okay, let's keep going now. We're going to go into conflict resolution, and it, of course, relates very much to what we've already covered about just general communication. And we have just plowed through these very quickly, and so, take this home and, put it in your bathroom where you pick it up and read it, or put it on your dresser where you can review and you can remember some of these things. Because we're flying through the material and there's so much more that could be said. And you can also do deep dive on Google and find some good resources, or some of the resources listed that are on the handout that you have. We'll talk a lot about communication. Okay, so resolving conflict. So first of all, to this Christian audience, let me say, I was raised in a Christian home. I was raised in church. I was raised in the evangelical community. And one thing that I've seen now as a therapist is us good church people, and this is a generalization, we don't often do a good job of teaching or modeling how to do conflict. Because, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, good Christians don't get mad. Good Christians don't get angry. Good Christians just, keep it all whatever. Copacetic and peace, blessed are the peacemakers. And so I grew up not knowing, pretty similar to Matt and Noel, I didn't know how to do conflict. My parents had conflict, but we never saw it. I never saw them talk through something. I just would sense, my siblings and I would sense periods of not speaking to each other, and then a day or two would go by and they seemed to be fine, but I never watched them talk through things. I never watched them. Now, it was, I guess if I had to choose, it was nice to not grow up in a home where there was, raging conflict all the time. But I grew up as this young woman. I'm a Christian. I was, high value of be nice, be kind, and be quiet. So I didn't know. And so my husband is pretty laid back. And so like Matt and Noel, we didn't have conflict. When our marriage fell apart, I remember gathering our church staff, and I told them, you guys, who you see in my husband at the office is who he is at home. He's kind, he's pretty laid back, he's not, so, I thought things were great. We didn't fight, we didn't argue. So when you think about conflict, no conflict is not healthy, okay? So if you are a couple that says, no, we always get along, things are good, we just don't let things bother us. That's what I used to say, we just don't let things bother us. That's not healthy. If you're on this end where there's high conflict, frequent conflict, and especially disrespectful and violent conflict, obviously that's not good either. But there is a place of individual and couples health that is found, because you cannot spend your life with another person and not expect or not know that there's not going to be differences. If there's absolutely no differences, there's no conflict, and you've basically married yourself, then that is not that fulfillment of living with somebody who you come together to make both of each other better. And sometimes that happens as iron is sharpening iron. So if you're coming today and you're high conflict, that's okay. We're going to talk about it. If you're coming and there's low or no conflict, then you need to go, okay, we need to start getting in touch with our feelings and our differences. Not that we make up conflict, but we need to give voice to those differences and learn how to talk through and resolve conflict. It's also one of the best skills you can model to your kids, because it's hard for a kid to grow up and get into their relationships and realize they don't know how to deal with conflict, or they either deal with it harshly or violently, or they don't deal with it all, and they are ill-equipped and don't know how to get through it and realize, holy cow, I didn't see this, I never learned how to do this. And so you are modeling for your children, for your grandchildren, how to do this. And especially within the church community, we need to know how to do this better. So, okay, resolving conflict. Again, these are some important things. They're not really in any specific priority order, but they're all things I want you to consider. First of all, establish some ground rules. So for Mitch and I, we have always said from the get-go, when we have a difference of opinion and we need to discuss it, we are not going to discuss it in a way that is attacking the other one's character or personhood. We try very hard not to ever make it about, you suck, you're a bad person, and make it about, hey, when you do the behavior you're doing or the way this thing is, but not attacking the person and their sense of personhood. What they're doing I don't like, and so on and so forth. You get this. So that's one of our ground rules. Another ground rule that I referred to before is we don't dive into hard topics after about 9 o'clock, and usually after 6 o'clock. We try to keep, that's just for us personally, because we realize it just typically goes a bad direction if we wait for late in the day to talk about something that's a conflict, because we're tired, and then our communication gets sloppy, and we usually have much more productive conversation if we sleep on it. So one of our ground rules is we don't go into conflict in the evening after a certain amount of time. One of our personal ground rules is we don't compare our situation to others. And that was a hard one for me, because I have a wonderful dad, and he's a hard act to follow. So I was constantly comparing my husband to my dad. Well, my dad never did that to my mom, or, my dad seemed to know how to, guess how much my husband liked hearing that. He never liked hearing that. So one of our ground rules is we don't compare our situation to other people or other situations. So you get the point. You got to figure out what are the ground rules. And then the other bullet points listed here also got incorporated as some of our ground rules. Okay, give yourself time to figure out what it is that's really bothering you, really hurting you, really upsetting you. So if you dive into a discussion and it's something that's conflict or an argument, before you really have a sense in yourself of, okay, what is it that's really upsetting me about this? And I was guilty of this. I would dive in without really knowing. And so then my conversation would go all over the place, and Mitch would be like, okay, but what is actually the issue? And I always thought, well, we'll get there. I'll wander around conversationally long enough, and I'll finally land on what really, because as I shared before, I figure out what I'm thinking and feeling as I'm talking about it. But if we are in conflict, it's really, really confusing and frustrating for my spouse. And so I have to be diligent and say, okay, in myself, I need to figure out what is it about this situation that really bothers me before I try to start communicating with him. Otherwise, we waste a lot of time and it's not productive. Practice delayed reaction or delayed response or delayed resolution. Most conflicts can be set aside for a short period in order to deal with them at a better time. Again, this goes to usually one of you is more verbal and tends to be the pursuer. And so if there's conflict, you maybe take that role as, we got to talk about this. I'm going to pursue my husband. I'm just going to, as soon as he walks in the door, and I just dive right in. And I do not use self-control and delayed gratification because it's bothering me right now, and I'm drilling down on it right now, and he feels like deer in the headlights. And over the years, I've had to learn, just hold your horses. Because if you choose a better time, and this is hard for a lot of couples because they feel like, oh, but it's so hard right now. I just have to get it out. I just have to tell them. You guys, you're not going to die. Most likely, it's not life or death. Most of the time, the things that are in conflict can wait a day. It can wait a few hours. It could even wait a week, 2 weeks. And so timing is everything. Give yourself the opportunity to grow in this area personally. Delay gratification. Now, get back to it. Don't deny it. Don't pretend like, oh, it's not a big deal. I just let it go, because that's not healthy either. But you don't have to jump on everything right in the moment because you're not going to get the outcome you want. So practice delay, delay, delay until you know you can come to it with clarity and respect and kindness. And when you know the other person is much more likely to really hear you. Seek not to win the argument, but to be understood and to understand. My husband leaves drawers and cupboards open. And now, initially, I just want him to do it my way. Shut the frickin' cupboard. Matt's laughing because he can imagine I really say that, and he can imagine what my husband's face would look like if I talked that way to him. Initially, I just want to win. Just do it my way. But if I come to it out of more, I want to understand him, and I want him to understand me, I can come with, hey, it's kind of frustrating for me, and perhaps my own quirkiness, when I walk into the kitchen and 2 cupboard doors are hanging wide open. It's just frustrating to me, and I'm just curious about if you notice that, or if you're aware that you do that, and so I'm coming with more of a posture of, I just want to understand this, versus I am going to win this. I mean, after 40 years, I have the right for him to start shutting cupboard doors. And so it totally switches how you're going to come across if you come into the conflict wanting to understand and wanting to be understood, rather than, I'm going to win and I'm going to have the last word, dang it. Changes your whole posture. Okay, inform and ask the other person if they're willing to discuss the conflict. Ask. So often we just dive in, we just react, and our country has a epidemic of not knowing how to delay gratification. And our phones have not helped that. We just dive in because and you will be, again, it's going to feel a little awkward if this is not your norm as you start to exercise this muscle. But if you ask permission, you ask, hey, Mitch, there's something I really want to talk to you. And I just did this a couple weeks ago about something that was significant, big, and could have been a massive conflict. I said, hey, I really need to talk to you about something. Is there a time tonight or tomorrow morning, or when is a good time that I can talk to you about this? And I also let him know a little bit about the topic, because that's scary too, to just tell your spouse, well, we need to talk. And that's scary for the spouse, like, okay, what's this coming down? I would feel scared. And so I said, I need to talk about some of the results from your doctor, your last doctor's visit. When's a good time to talk about it? Is there time? And we had to wait a day. We waited a day till we knew we were going together for coffee in a private space. And we had a pretty significant, could have been heated, but asking permission, asking if he's in a mindset that we can go there. And he does the same for me. It's giving those kind of qualifiers, those introductory remarks. Hey, something's been on my mind, something's bothered me. I'd like us to talk it out, but I want to respect you and ask you when is a good time. Can be a game changer. And again, if you haven't been used to doing that, it's going to feel awkward. Your spouse might feel a little suspicious, like, well, why are you acting that way? What are you up to? What are you doing? But it can be so, so helpful. So let them know you need to talk. Ask if they're willing. Ask when a good time is. Set a day, set the time, and then do it, right? Because if you ask for permission and you set a time, but you never get back to it, then that feels disrespectful to the person that needs to talk. They'd be like, well, we never did get to it. And then that backfires. So you have to close the loop. You have to fulfill your commitment. Don't blindside or attack the other person. Just coming at them out of the blue. That is such, forget it. You're not going to have the outcome you want. You won't be heard. Defenses go up immediately. And then if it's me, I have to escalate it and get even louder because I can tell he's shutting down, he's not hearing me. So then I just think if I talk faster and I talk louder and my eyes flash of anger, he's really finally going to hear me. Well, guess about how good that works? It doesn't. He doesn't remember or even hear what I'm saying because his body is so heightened now, he's just going into freeze and withdraw. And he will just start saying, I'm sorry, not because he's really sorry, but because he just wants to shut me up. I'm sorry, honey, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't want you to be sorry. I want you to talk. Well, I'm going about it at the total ineffective way. So it really can be a game changer. Be specific and succinct. Again, this is back what we talked about earlier. Use bullet points. Don't go on and on and on and on and on. 60 years old and I still struggle with that. I'm just sure you want to hear so this is what I tell my husband. This is one of our rules. Honey, I got something I need to talk to you about. And I think it's one of those things I'm probably going to have to talk about it 10 times because I'm that girl. And so I can talk to you 10 times about this, or I can talk to you a couple times about this and maybe talk to some other people I feel close to about this. Is this or when is a good time for me to talk to you about this? Rather than picking one time to talk to him and carrying on for over an hour, and well, I could. It just is not going to have a good outcome. So be succinct. So I like to give him right away, you think of headlines in the newspaper. The first bolded headline kind of tells you what you need to know. He doesn't want me to mysteriously unravel and unfold all the details. He doesn't, that feels scary to him. He feels like, oh, what else is coming? What else is coming? And so he's not really able to focus. So I give him a bold headline. Babe, I didn't like how you responded to your doctors at your last physical and the information they gave to you. And that scares me. And that was my big, bold headline. So it wasn't a mystery. He knew we were going to give more detail to that, but that's the bold headline. He doesn't have to guess. He doesn't have to hold his breath for what else is coming. I just put it out there. In 2 sentences, he knew. I didn't go on and on and on and on and on because I didn't want to lose him, his attention. So be succinct. If you're verbal like I am, take a deep breath and don't get defensive and ask your spouse, do I give you too many details? Do you need this to be shorter? Just be willing to take their feedback because it's in your best interest. You're going to get more of what you want if you communicate it in a way that they feel more comfortable receiving. And then there's those times where my husband is extremely generous to me. And I'll say, babe, I'm going to have to talk about this 10 times because I just have to process this. Are you in a good space? And he's like, sure, bring it on. And I can just see, he's just with me, he's relaxed. I can go on and on and on and on, and he's listening. He might get up and get something and come back and sit down, and he might, but we talk about talking. It's that meta communication. Communicate about how you're communicating. So be succinct, talk in bullet points, and I realize now I just have not been a good example of that because I've belabored this point. Anyway, stick to the issue. Okay, this is a big one for couples. Stick to the issue. We are talking about cupboard doors. Okay, don't go down a bunny trail on all the other things that remind you of that they do that you're bugged at. I'm not going to talk about the toilet paper roll or the toothpaste tube. I'm sticking to cupboard doors. So we call that, as therapists, it's actually in the literature that we learn in graduate school, kitchen sinking. That means you get into a discussion, a conflict, and you start down one issue, and then you start throwing in everything and the kitchen sink. And then it goes all over the place, and you don't really even remember what is exactly you started talking about. And it's not productive, obviously. And it's hurtful because we start lobbing in things that, can be so wounding when that's really not the issue. So stick to the issue, pick one issue at a time. And I just said again to my husband yesterday, I'm obsessed with how the toothpaste goes up through the tube. We have different styles. 40 years later, still different styles. So we each have our own tube. Solve. Easy. Easy. We each have our own tube of toothpaste. We haven't quite figured out the toilet paper roll thing, but maybe by year 50 we'll have that figured out. Use I statements, especially during conflict. And so again, I know it's a ridiculous example, but I'm trying to keep it focused. My example of our cupboard doors and drawers. Use I statements. Honey, I feel frustrated when I walk into the kitchen and there's like 2 or 3 cupboard doors still left open. I get the kitchen all clean, or whatever room, get it all, and I have all the pretty decorating things all, I get a sense of, all is right with the world when I step back and go, look at how pretty our kitchen is. And so when I come in and I see drawers and cupboards open, I feel like, it doesn't look pretty now, it just looks haphazard. And I know I'm probably be overly sensitive, and I realize it's not that big of a deal. And so I have not said you one time, and I challenge you to do this. Enter into a conflict, and I challenge you to try to never use the word you. Now, this is not long term, but just try once doing that. And then I just get quiet. I've said all the things about what I'm noticing, what I'm bothered by, how it makes me feel, and then I just get quiet. And I allow him to respond. And I haven't attacked him. I haven't said, you should know by now, 40 years into our marriage, that it bugs me when you do that. Why do you always do that? You don't respect. It makes me feel like you don't really notice or care that I just cleaned up and decorated our kitchen so nice. You see, the minute we start saying you, the person gets defensive and shuts down, and we often then don't really hear what's being said. So use I statements. I feel this way. This is bothering me. I am wondering if this could be different. I'm curious about your perspective on this. I'm struggling. So you're owning what you're thinking and feeling, how it's impacting you, without doing a lot of finger pointing, and then just allow them to respond. And then if you're the spouse who's been listening, I challenge and encourage you to respond, to respect your spouse enough to then respond. Practice the appropriate soft openers to decrease defensiveness. Hey, babe, it seems to me that blah, blah, blah. Hey, Mitch, I'm wondering about something. Hey, babe, help me understand. Now you have to say it sincerely, not in a patronizing way. Hey, help me understand this. That sounds pretty manipulative. This has to be genuine and authentic. Can I describe to you what this is like for me? In conflict, ask more questions than offering statements. So there's your challenge in conflict. Try to do a conflict discussion without using the word you, and try to ask more questions than offer statements. That's a game changer. And so for me, it's saying, honey, are you aware that the cupboard doors are all open? And I have to say it genuinely, not with an edge in my voice. Hey, do you have any, what goes on for you? What's it like for you? Is this not important? You just don't see it? So that, and you have to ask questions carefully, because again, we're protecting the other person from getting defensive, because once defensiveness happens, then conversation and agreement and understanding, it minimizes it, and you're not going to be adequately heard in order to talk through. Avoid using absolutes. You always do this. Really? I always leave all the cupboard doors open? No, that's not true. I can't tell him, you always do this. You never acknowledge me. You never kiss me. You never help me with the kids. You never talk to me first before you make plans. You never compliment me, whatever it is. Don't use always, never. Don't use should. Don't tell your spouse how they should or shouldn't feel. Don't go right to fix-it mode. Well, let me just tell you how. Because Mitch's tendency would be to tell me how we can fix our problem with him leaving cupboard doors open. Let's just go to fix-it mode. It's not about fixing it. I want him to know how I feel about it. So, and he doesn't like it when I go into fix-it mode with him either. So don't use always and never. Don't use I should. Don't go into fix-it mode. Listen and be curious. Don't exaggerate. If I'm feeling something deeply, it's very easy for me and my personality type to really exaggerate. And then the opposite is true as well in the Christian community, because I was conditioned to not get mad and not be angry. I could go the other direction and not exaggerate. I would minimize, like, it's not really that big of a deal, when actually it really was a big deal, and I really should have given voice to it. If you're an exaggerator and a storyteller, be really careful, because you lose integrity if you exaggerate and it takes the problem somewhere it doesn't need to go. So be really careful. And if you're a minimizer, really work hard on knowing and giving a voice and not diminishing how this is impacting you. Of course, with respect and kindness. There's no excuse to be ungodly and be mean or abusive or harsh. Be kind, be respectful. Remember in Ephesians, it talks about whatever you say, do it for the edification and the building up of the other. Well, even hard conflict conversations can really be an example of the bettering and edifying the other. It takes practice. It's going to feel awkward. Your spouse might think, what weird thing are you doing? What book have you read now? You're being weird. It's okay. It's good, good, good. Don't stockpile. Stockpile just means you don't really say it when it's bothering you. You just wait and you just push it down. And then all of a sudden one day something triggers it, and now it just comes, rolling out. And then there was this, and then there was that, and then there was this, and then 5 years ago you did that, and you didn't do that, and you said this, and this happened. And my spouse is looking at me going, whoa. Where did that all come from? In our marriage, now we laugh about it. One of the funniest examples of this was when things were falling apart, and at that point we had been married 22 years, and our therapist was helping us learn how to talk unfiltered without, minimizing our feelings and figuring out what was bothering us. And so it was my husband's turn to talk to me about what bothered him, and unfiltered but kind. And he got all, he said a couple things, and then he got all flustered and kind of got red in the face. And I thought, oh, wow, something really big's coming. And he said, and I don't care what you think, I'm getting a dog. I've wanted a dog for 7 years, and I am getting one. I don't care what you say. And I was kind of like, get a dog like that? You have pushed that down and stockpiled that in your stack of things that you're upset and bothered, and you've not brought it to me? I laughed and said, babe, that's an easy one. Go get a freaking dog. I don't care. But see, stockpiling is just that building up, building up, building up, building up. And then finally, when something triggers us, we are less likely to know how to do that in conflict in a healthy, respectful way. And it does not turn out. How are we doing on time?
We're doing the practice.
Yeah.
11:13. However much time.
Well, let's do that now, because practice is hard. And again, it's going to feel weird today. It's going to feel weird, but I want you to be mindful of these bullet points under resolving conflict. First, before I give you practice instructions, someone shout out, what do you think would be the most challenging bullet point under resolving conflict? It doesn't have to be you. It can be for somebody you know. Yes?
Be more authentic and not sarcastic.
Okay, being authentic and not sarcastic. And see, we had to deal with that in our marriage. My husband is extremely sarcastic, dry sense of humor. And I kind of got to a point through counseling where I was able to say to him, that's hurtful. When we're talking about something serious, that's your method of trying to shut me down. Please stop. So thank you for admitting that. That's a biggie. Okay, here's what I want you to do for practicing this. I want you to pick a low-level disagreement. I'm not even going to say argument. I'm going to say disagreement, low level. So for me, cupboard doors is low level. So pick some. This is not the time to jump into your most difficult challenge between you. So whatever is a low-level conflict. It can even be, and might preferably for today, be something you already have talked about, but you can practice using that. So it could be the way somebody tucks the kids in, or it could be the way they put the toilet paper roll on the roll. It could be how they park the car, or the fact that they won't throw away any of their flannel shirts that are 60 years old. Or so pick low-level disagreement. And then I want you to just have a discussion. I want you to take turns talking. And I want you to practice listening. I want you to practice use I statements. Practice asking questions for follow-up. Practice paraphrasing and saying back what you're hearing from them. This is not about solving the issue. It's about understanding and being understood. Okay, Noelle, give us.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna give you the same instructions as before of like spread out, find some space. Take your hand out with you, that might be helpful. And then I will, that is actually here, it'll stay warm. So at 11:30, I'll call you guys in and you'll be able to grab lunch. You guys can sit and eat lunch here at the tables. And you can even like continue into the next session, like you have to clean up before we start the next session.